Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1278 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's show, I'll be speaking with Julie. She's the mother of three, and one of her children has type 1 diabetes and ADHD. Please don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. Drink ag1.com/juicebox. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. But everybody is welcome. Type 1, Type 2, gestational, loved ones, it doesn't matter to me. If you're impacted by diabetes and you're looking for support, comfort, or community, check out Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. The episode you're listening to is sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. You can get your diabetes testing supplies the same way we do from US Med. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Eversense. The Eversense CGM is more convenient, requiring only one sensor every 6 months. It offers more flexibility with its easy on, easy off smart transmitter, and allows you to take a break when needed. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. This show is sponsored today by the glucagon that my daughter carries, Gvoke HypoPen. Find out more at GvokeGlucagon.com/juicebox.
My name is Julie. I'm the mother of an 11-year-old type 1 son, and I work as a pharmacist in critical care for a living.
11-year-old son has type 1. You're a critical care pharmacist?
Yes, I am.
What is that?
Pharmacists in hospitals, people don't seem to realize, but they're a bit everywhere, kind of hiding in the background. Obviously, there's some that are in the dispensary, looking at the orders that come in, dispensing the meds. But the more it goes, the more the profession is becoming deeply involved in the teams on the units. Mm-hmm. And so a critical care pharmacist is a pharmacist that is in with the ICU team, rounding and a bit like a consultant, but part of the team, where you try to customize, adjust, make sure the meds are ordered right and safely for everybody.
Did you happen to hear the first episode of the Cold Wind series?
I did.
Yeah, and that person was a clinical pharmacist, am I right? It's a pharmacist in a hospital. Bunch of beds. She said that they were involved in some of the care stuff. Maybe something similar, perhaps.
Or I thought I did. Or maybe I heard the brainstorm. I don't know if I heard that one.
Oh, okay. Well, I got to speak to that person. That person spoke anonymously because they were being very honest about the hospital they worked in and some of the things they saw. Do you need to be anonymous or no?
No, because my goal is not to be a whistleblower.
Okay,
it's
cool.
more to give the reality of the practice.
Nice. I would love to hear about it. And you're, just so I don't wonder the whole time, are you French Canadian?
I am.
You sound very French Canadian. That's why I asked.
I know. And the more tired, the more it comes across.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
Are you tired now?
I am.
How come?
Because I do too much with not enough time and take care of my type 1, but also of my 2 other boys. And
yeah, I know. It's a lot. I think it's a bit of a circumstance of how great life is right now and how many things there are to do and accomplish and see. It makes you feel like there just isn't. It really does feel like there's not enough time. I woke up at 4:30 this morning just to go to the bathroom. Opened my eyes. I have to go to the bathroom. Went to the bathroom. I walked out. I went, what about this? I checked on something and I went and looked at something else. And then before I knew it, I didn't go back to sleep. And I haven't been bored or slow. And that was 8 hours ago now. You and I are recording at noon my time. I still have 1,000 things to do today. And I'm excited about every one of them. So I know how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, you're here to, well, I guess, what first, let's find out a little bit about your son with type 1. How old was he when he was diagnosed?
He was 6 years old. We're just past the 5-year mark.
Okay. How is it going?
We're not achieving the same kind of goals that you and your daughter are achieving, but it's going as good as it can. My son also has ADHD, which makes life a little bit more difficult. So we need to find ways to find compromise between what he can do and the goals that we would love to achieve.
What are some of the things that stand in the way of the goals?
The first thing is his inability to keep his eyes on his blood sugar. ADHD people usually need a short-term reward that they care about to get themselves going. Diabetes is a long run, right? So it's not very easy for him to actually look at his blood sugar and even to react to alarms when Dexcom is screaming at him, because it's less interesting than what else he was doing at the time where the alarm came.
Does every person not need a reward for things to be interested in it?
Yes, but if you're not able to foresee the future and so try to aim for long-term goals,
okay,
diabetes becomes not interesting quite fast.
I see.
I guess he's never had any really bad lows that required like glucagon or anything like that. So for him, the idea of severe hypo is still very elusive. Like it's not something that's tangible for him.
Yeah, I understand. So he manages with what? I mean, you're in Canada. They gave him a stick and a rock and you pour the insulin through a leaf, or how does it work?
Well, when we started, we were given Humalog and NPH because there's no nurses in school in Alberta. And so we needed to find a way to cover lunch without having a poke at lunch, which works not at all. But that was the first year of therapy because of the setup that we have. And because like I was offered a pump after 3 months, but I was not ready with what it implied. I needed time to process because here with no nurses, that means that if something wrong happens with the pump, I have to drop everything at my work and then go help him out.
Right.
Because at the time he was 6, right?
Yeah.
No. He was 6 the first year and then he was 7 when we started the pump.
With the pump. It's not in every province, correct? But there are some where there are just no school nurses. So this whole NPH thing is how they get around that.
Yes, that's the practicality of it without school nurses.
Right. Okay. So when a pump could have helped, you weren't ready. What kept you from being ready? Do you recall?
As I said, for me, it was the idea that because that if the pump stops working, if it gets ripped off, something happened.
I'm sorry, just the fear that if something happened at school, you'd have to leave and go there.
Yes,
okay.
Because I have a job, because I don't know how understanding my bosses are going to be.
Gotcha.
It was just very heavy on my back. Yeah, a few months later, I was ready, but then we were on vacation when they were giving the pump classes. And so it took, in the end, 11 months to be able to access the pump.
I see. I just kind of imagined that there would be other reasons, but that reason was strong enough for you that it just stopped the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That being said, he was getting to, he was very sensitive initially. And so he would end up like above what Dexcom measures every single evening. And I couldn't exactly correct him because it was at a time where I was hoping to sleep a bit. And he would go from like here's 18 to 4, so something like 350 to 70 with half a unit of insulin, which was the smallest measurement that the pen was allowing.
If you take insulin or sulfonylureas, you are at risk for your blood sugar going too low. You need a safety net when it matters most. Be ready with Gvoke HypoPen. My daughter carries Gvoke HypoPen everywhere she goes because it's a ready-to-use rescue pen for treating very low blood sugar in people with diabetes ages 2 and above that I trust. Low blood sugar emergencies can happen unexpectedly, and they demand quick action. Luckily, Gvoke HypoPen can be administered in 2 simple steps, even by yourself in certain situations. Show those around you where you store Gvoke HypoPen and how to use it. They need to know how to use Gvoke HypoPen before an emergency situation happens. Learn more about why Gvoke HypoPen is in Arden's Diabetes Toolkit at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. Gvoke shouldn't be used if you have a tumor in the gland on the top of your kidneys called a pheochromocytoma, or if you have a tumor in your pancreas called an insulinoma. Visit gvokeglucagon.com/risk for safety information. Yeah, I gotcha. And are you married?
I am.
You are. And you have a couple of other kids, or did I get that right?
Yes.
You have 3.
Yes.
In total.
11, 9, and 7.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So you would see that high blood sugar and know if I make a correction, even a small correction to this, it very well may be a low in the middle of the night and I have to sleep or this whole thing's going to fall apart.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a tough decision, right?
It was awful.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the confidence to just, because I could have pulled the syringe and done it myself, but I was just not there. I was kind of frozen.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about I'm assuming, guilt that comes with letting the blood sugar stay high?
Oh, obviously. Like that guilt is, even today, that guilt is awful. Like I don't need to be convinced of what I need to do to get my son where he needs to go. At my work, I see the people that have all the complications by their 30s and 40s.
Yeah.
No, I see all the people that chose to not take care of themselves or were pushed into it because of circumstances. I play as hard as I can, but I guess I'm limited with what we can achieve with my son, with the fact that there's literally nobody looking out for him at school.
So there's nobody at school to help. He's not able to focus on himself.
No.
And there's only so much you can do. You're spread thin enough already.
Yeah, I basically go in from a distance.
Right, right. I would imagine then your focus, when you have free time to think, is about how to get him into a place where he can help himself better. Is that right?
Yeah, twist my brain backwards to try to find how he can manage or how he can take more on himself or give him more freedom, because now he's a preteen and he doesn't necessarily want to eat on a schedule. So we give him tools, and I try to emphasize, because with ADHD, having visual or physical reminders is key to be able to keep remembering. Like the short term, not necessarily short, but the working memory is faulty to a certain extent. And so being able to have like alarms on his phone or a cheat sheet in his lunch, or even like I use masking tape that I put on every single container and every little thing in his lunch, so that in the worst case, if he grabs the thing, he's going to see the green tape and it will remind him that he needs to bolus and how much.
Does that work?
For the most part, it works okay. Sometimes he forgets to do some things, but it's as good as it can be.
Do you have the opportunity like to text at lunchtime?
When he was younger, the teachers were open to have Dexcom on their phone and to have me text them. The past couple of years in grade 5 and 6, that kind of went away. The teachers don't want to give their private number. Some of them told me I don't want to have my cell phone in my classroom. So even if I write them a 15-page care plan like I'm supposed to, they're not able to apply any of it.
Think that's an excuse from them, or do you think they really don't want? I mean, do you know 3 people that don't have their phone with them? You know what I mean?
Don't know. I think the grade 5 teacher really didn't want to have his phone in his classroom. The grade 6 teacher, well, she said that she would borrow the school's phone for like a month or 2, see how things go, and then by then we were already set up to just function, him and me, and in the end, I also don't have anybody that's like fighting with me when I want to wing it. Like when I just want to follow and go with the flow.
You can just do what you want to do. Yeah. That part's nice, not to have another person involved in the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know anything about ADHD really, but is it a thing that can be medicated, or like how do you attack the bigger problem?
Yes. Of what I understand, the vast majority of patients will do much better with medication, mostly stimulants like the Ritalin and Dexedrine of this world, and all those other formulation of the same. And some of them will be able to, it's basically a delay in your executive functioning development in your brain. So you're not at the level where the rest of your body is. And whether or not that delay will catch up or it will always be behind, you don't know. And so the way to palliate for that is to give medications. There's, as I said, mostly it's stimulants, but there's a couple other classes of meds that you can give as well.
Are you qualified to describe that to me? How does that work? if somebody's going so fast that they can't concentrate, why does speeding them up help them slow down?
It doesn't speed them up. It basically keeps if I remember well, it keeps the neurotransmitters in the window longer.
Interesting.
So that the effect lasts a bit longer, and it gives them an ability to focus.
Are there diminishing returns of that medication? Like, does the efficacy go as time passes?
The main two things that I would see with those meds is they are appetite suppressants, or at least the stimulants. I'm not talking about the other two classes. But the stimulants are appetite suppressants. So you end up with people that have less appetite, and you need to monitor their weight, especially with children, to make sure that they're not losing weight over time. Some kids have to stop those meds because they cannot find a way to keep up with the weight.
I see. Do you think anyone remembers the episode of Family Ties with Michael J. Fox, where his sister, Justine Bateman, who is, by the way, Jason Bateman's sister, her character is using one of those drugs as a diet drug, and then he gets a hold of it during test time and uses it as like speed to like study for fun. Did you ever watch Family Ties?
Being French Canadian, my cultural background is very different.
Yeah.
Family Ties is not something that I used to watch. I vaguely know about it, but...
Oh, you do? Okay. Yeah, I hope people right now are like, I remember that episode. Does everyone remember his friend's name, the dorky guy? Skippy. That's enough of this. Let's move on, Julie. Okay, so does your son use the medication?
He does. Yeah, he's using Vyvanse for now.
And it's doing something? Not enough?
Oh, yeah. Himself and us can tell, because the problem is it's a med that you need to take early in the morning so that it can wear off by the end of the day, and you can go to bed.
Okay.
Otherwise, people have insomnia. And so by 8-9 o'clock in the morning, if he hasn't taken it, everybody knows.
Everybody knows because he's scattered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, and even him, I usually get a text by 8-9 in the morning saying, "Hey, Mom, I think I forgot my meds."
Gotcha.
So it works better for him, and it works better for us.
I see.
There's less impulsivity. There's more focus towards activities that he likes and activities that he doesn't like.
Does anyone else in your family have this? Like, do you have any other experience with it?
It's a highly genetic disorder. For the vast majority of people with it, other than some head traumas, it's a genetic disorder. And there's a brother of my mom that was diagnosed at 60 with it a few years ago.
At 60?
At 60. But he struggled his whole life.
Yeah.
And now he has an explanation. He just thought that he was dumber than the rest of us.
Oh,
and in the end, he was not. He was having issues with focusing and
about that
functioning.
How does that get diagnosed?
It's kind of a clinical diagnosis. Like, there's not like a blood test or anything like that. You can have a full evaluation with like either a psychologist or psychiatrist, or we went kind of the short way. Like, there's some questionnaires, like 1-page questionnaire, that are asking you if you do certain things, like never, sometimes, often, all the time. Mm-hmm. And you have to show that it's across settings, meaning that it's not just a home problem. It's a home problem, a school problem, a daycare problem, a workplace problem.
Interesting.
And so it gets diagnosed based on your scores, or as I said, the evaluation that the professionals can do. Mm-hmm. You can try meds. Most people will see a benefit with stimulants because obviously, like, some people use it as drugs to do exams, right? Because it allows you to focus intensely on something. Mm-hmm. But if you have a deficit, well, it brings you closer to normal.
How about that? That's really something. That's a lifelong thing, or do you come off it once in a while to see if things have changed?
As I said, like, there's a small portion of people, I think, that by adulthood have caught up, but the vast majority of people still need some help later in life. Either they learn strategies to cope or they use meds.
My last question is, do you know what the half-life is?
The half-life of the med?
It only stays in your system for 24 hours, right? Like, so if you stop taking it...
It's less than that. It's less than that because it needs to wear off by the end of the day. Otherwise, you don't sleep at night.
So it's a thing you would see a benefit from immediately if you took it. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. That's very interesting. I appreciate you sharing that with me. You wanted to come on the show, though, more to talk about like your job function and what you do. So tell me about it. So
I've been...
Diabetes comes with a lot of things to remember. So it's nice when someone takes something off of your plate. US Med has done that for us. When it's time for Arden's supplies to be refreshed, we get an email. Rolls up and in your inbox says, "Hi Arden, this is your friendly reorder email from US Med." You open up the email, it's a big button that says, "Click here to reorder," and you're done. Finally, somebody taking away a responsibility instead of adding one. US Med has done that for us. An email arrives, we click on a link, and the next thing you know, your products are at the front door. That simple. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. I never have to wonder if Arden has enough supplies. I click on one link, I open up a box, I put the stuff in the drawer, and we're done. US Med carries everything from insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies to the latest CGMs like the Libre 3 and the Dexcom G7. They accept Medicare nationwide, over 800 private insurers, and all you have to do to get started is call 888-721-1514 or go to my link, usmed.com/juicebox. Using that number or my link helps to support the production of the Juicebox Podcast. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. The Eversense CGM is the only long-term CGM with 6 months of real-time glucose readings, giving you more convenience, confidence, and flexibility. And you didn't hear me wrong. I didn't say 14 days. I said 6 months. So if you're tired of changing your CGM sensor every week, you're tired of it falling off or the adhesive not lasting as long as it should or the sensor failing before the time is up, if you're tired of all that, you really owe it to yourself to try the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. I'm here to tell you that if the hassle of changing your sensors multiple times a month is just more than you want to deal with, if you're tired of things falling off and not sticking or sticking too much or having to carry around a whole bunch of extra supplies in case something does fall off, then taking a few minutes to check out EversenseCGM.com/juicebox might be the right thing for you. When you use my link, you're supporting the production of the podcast and helping to keep it free and plentiful. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox.
A critical care pharmacist for 17 years now. And we see all kinds of, it's not a unit that has only, obviously, diabetics. It's very a mixed bag of surgical, medical, trauma, transplant, all kinds of people. I don't know where to start. I totally understand the frustration of the patients and their families when they feel like the medical team doesn't understand type 1. And I kind of agree that they do. And they also have, for a lot of them, at least in ICU, they don't have much interest for it because there's so much to learn. ICU is a mandatory rotation for most residencies, I would think. And it's a world that of its own. Like, it's a world where all the things that you care about in the outpatient setting becomes not obsolete, but like, we'll get you out of here and then we can talk about your blood pressure and your cholesterol and your diabetes and all that stuff. I'm not quite sure how they get taught in school. And it's the same for me, like I talk with my colleagues and it's the same. I try to explain to them how things work and that the day you change how you feed the patient, well, obviously you need to look and change the insulin to go with it. But there's so many variables, like people are oftentimes infected or insanely stressed out from the trauma that they are going through. And from the disease that makes them so sick, they need to be in ICU, and the ventilator that makes them breathe, or the physio that they try to make you do to keep you active, not lose so much muscle mass, and keep your brain in a better place, that it's really, really hard to adjust any of this until you're stable.
So if the people that you're working with don't seem to understand and maybe don't have a ton of interest in it, you do now because your son's been diagnosed, but prior to his diagnosis, working in a hospital setting, and what was your understanding?
I was exactly where I am now, and I was exactly like the rest of them. Not because we don't care about the patient, but it's just sometimes it looks, if even to us, it looks like, oh, it's diabetes. Well, to them in that setting, it's even more, oh, it's diabetes. It becomes easier oftentimes to use an insulin infusion because then you can tweak it as you go. And then when the patient is more stable, we can go towards like BBIT, the basal bolus insulin, as long as you have some degree of stability.
Like, so it feels like to me a little bit like you want me to understand that you don't think that the lack of knowledge is, I don't know what the right word is. It's not malicious, right? Like, but
no, diabetes just looks more random to them than it does to me, probably.
How?
But even then, even I take guesses on how to adjust things. No, like I need to have the confidence to just say, let's try this and see what happens.
Even though there's a mathematical equation that can help you set up a person's basal insulin to carb ratio, insulin sensitivity, that's based on their weight. You know, it's a starting place. It's based on their weight, their amount of activity. That's not random. It's just a thing you need to learn before you know what I mean? Yeah.
Right. But in the acute setting, all those things go out the window. No, once you have a massive infection or you have a trauma or you're sick from whatever you're sick of, but that requires you to be in ICU, all those things change. Even if you knew exactly their parameters, those parameters have changed significantly.
No one's going to try to fix it, right? Like there's no world where you come in that acute situation and, you know, they say to you, hey, how's your blood sugar? And you go, my A1C is 9.5. It's not great. They don't stop and go, okay, well, we'll fix your insulin settings so that we can get it closer to being correct for the stay. Like nobody really does that. They go, okay.
No, obviously, but they just put you on an insulin infusion initially, probably with a target that's a lot more lax than what you would target at home. That being said, the patients that come in with an A1C at 10, you don't hope to fix them fully by the time they leave the hospital. Obviously, they have bigger issues.
Yeah, but see, that's funny because when I hear people say, it's not just you, and I'm not arguing with you, I'm interested in the conversation. Mm-hmm. But when people say, no, obviously they don't fix that, I don't understand that. So if I came in, for example, and I had recently, I have a big laceration on my leg and it's emergency. And I come in and they say, do you take any medication? And I said, oh yeah, I do. I take a heart medication for an arrhythmia, but I know I don't take the right amount. Would the hospital say, well, how much are you taking? And then call in a cardiologist and have the cardiologist come in and go, hey, you know what? They're right. They're not taking the right amount. This isn't right. We'll change wouldn't that happen?
It would happen, you hope, by the time they go home. That being said, a lot of those things are offset by the fact that when you're really sick, oftentimes you need meds to keep your blood pressure up. And all those meds are stopped because they have the potential to make your blood pressure even lower. Mm-hmm. So as I said, all the stuff that you do chronically is kind of on pause. The stuff that we need to restart right away, we will. But there's a lot of things that become secondary to you surviving this.
Is it not true that most of the reasons people find themselves in emergent situations is because the stuff that they're supposed to be doing chronically, they don't do correctly?
Some of it, yes.
Yeah. But it still doesn't get addressed, though.
It will get addressed probably closer to discharge. And it needs to be addressed by the family doc after that. Because as I said, when you're not in your home setting, some things are going to behave differently. Yeah. No, if you're stressed because you're in hospital, maybe your blood pressure will be higher than it would be sitting at home in your cozy environment that you know.
Sure.
And so if we adjust your blood pressure meds to meet that target on the ward, then you go home and you go hypotensive. And all those, like blood pressure is one example, but like a lot of things are flipped upside down when you're in the hospital just because you're sick, your body knows you're sick and you don't react the way you would expect to. Plus, for blood sugar, nobody has a Dexcom in the hospital, right? Nobody has a Libre. Everybody's doing like 4 times a day pokes, plus when you're worried. But in ICU, when a patient is sedated and intubated, they don't necessarily tell you that they feel like, oh yeah, I'm starting to have the shakes. And so you need to play it very safe because you don't want them hypo.
Right. I mean, I understand. It's just comes down to the fact, I think, of the layman's expectation. The hospital's a place where I go to see medical people. If there's something wrong with me, they're going to address it. Mm-hmm. But in more honesty, a hospital is a place for procedures and for emergencies. It's not really to get your health in order.
Or at least it can be a start of something, but it needs to continue in the community afterwards.
Yeah. So what falls apart after that?
The patients go back to their own habits. So that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The family docs, some are very good at it and some maybe not so much. Because they deal with a lot of things. Like family docs have a job that is very difficult in the sense that they need to be able to flag for a million different things that could go wrong. Yeah, they're probably more cautious than aggressive by fear of causing, as I said, hypoglycemia, hypotension, like stuff that in the immediate moment could be risky. Because if you have somebody that, if you have like a 75-year-old woman that has hypotension or low blood sugar, they might fall down the stairs and then they become somebody who will probably not make it in the end, because then they broke bones in their body or they became paraplegic or, it's it starts a spiral that doesn't necessarily lead where you want to go.
Right.
So I would assume that that's part of a discussion, like the reality of where people live and what they do and the decisions that they make for themselves.
Does the phrase pass the buck translate for you?
Yeah, pass the puck to the GP. Yeah, for sure.
The buck. But I love that you said puck and you're Canadian. Pass the buck. It's just a term that means make it someone else's problem. Pass it on to the next person. And it feels like that. It feels like the patient is saying, well, the doctor should tell me what to do. And the general practitioner says, well, I told them what to do and they don't do it. And then you get to a hospital setting where they go, that's not really our job. That's somebody else's job. So there's three people involved in this trifecta, and not one of them steps forward and says, hey, you know what? I'm going to make up the deficiencies of the other two here. I'll fix this. That's not the case. Everyone just passes it back and forth to each other. And that sounds like I've had a lot of these conversations this year, Julie. And over again, that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that the doctor didn't tell me. The system's not set up for this. If you had better insurance, I don't have the time to sit with patients like that. They're all, reasons, but they sound like excuses. If you're at home, if you're at home with a 10A1C and your life's being shortened, they're excuses, right? They're not reasons. Not unlike a lot of societal conversations. This is as far as this conversation goes, because there's never anybody in any scenario willing to say, hey, you know what? You're right. Throw that on me. I'm going to take care of it. There's always for good reasons. I'm certainly not coming down on you, but you said earlier your son's blood sugars stay higher than you want them to be because you have limited resources too. Right? So, I keep having these conversations looking for an answer, but the answer over and over again seems like, this is it. We'll just see where the chips fall. And some people get lucky and some people have brains that lead them to understanding their diabetes better, or the tools or the, what have you, the education, and they actually follow through with it. And some people don't. And those people are lost and there's nothing we can do for them. Can that be the truth?
To a certain extent, you're probably right.
Yeah.
And not every professional is a go-getter the same way as, there's a lot of times, I guess over time, I understood very well that a lot of things, it doesn't matter who does it as long as it gets done. And I end up doing a lot of job where I work that is not exactly my job.
Oh, yeah. Oh, please.
Oh, yeah. But some people are going to be like, I will fix problems. And some people are going to be shoveling in the next person's turf. And in the end, that definitely happens. Not everybody, as I said, is a let's get this fixed.
The way I always think about it is that it sometimes seems to me that people work harder at not doing their job than it would have taken for them to do their job. There's so much effort put into not doing something. It's fascinating. It's funny, to give you a personal perspective, I guess that's not my personality, so it's confusing to me. I think that people might think, oh, Scott's trying to get to the bottom of how this happened so we can fix it. I'm just confused by it. I don't imagine it's fixable. I'm just baffled by a person who has a medical issue that says, it's all right if this kills me. I'm baffled by a doctor who looks at somebody who's on their way out and goes, they should have tried harder. You know what I mean? I don't understand that at all. My brain can't make sense of any of that. And so I keep having these conversations, hoping that someone's going to pop up at the end and go, you know what we should do? Or that this big idea is going to jump up into my head. But so far, the best idea I come up with is make all this information available on a podcast, and the people who want it, who can find it, and the rest of them, I guess, won't, but at least they had a chance.
But this is why your podcast is so valuable.
Yeah, I know, but it's not.
But it's going to be valuable for the people who are go-getters that want actually to do something about it.
Or even are lucky enough to trip over it. Because there are oftentimes people are go-getters, but the help they find isn't valuable to them. But they stick to it because they think they found it. And then they have middling results. And they say things like, oh, diabetes is so hard. I mean, I have a 7.5 A1C. It's the best I can do. You know, like that kind of stuff. When they just don't have the other ideas. It seems like to me, as crazy as it might sound, because I'm the one that makes the podcast and I do know how valuable it is to people because I get to see the feedback, but this shouldn't be the answer. You know what I'm saying? Like, this should not be the answer. And yet I understand that it is sometimes, because I had a conversation with a lifelong type 1 just this morning, a person I hadn't spoken to in such a long time. And they were telling me about they're burned out and they just don't take care of themselves. And I was like, well, you know, what is it you're not doing? And it's like bolusing for food. Mm-hmm. I said, why not? I can't bring myself to do it. And I didn't even know what to say. I said, you should probably get a therapist, because what I wanted to say was just do it. I mean, who cares if you want to do it or not? This is an obvious one. It feels like they sunk to the bottom of a 4-foot pool and can't go to the trouble of standing up. And that they're like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm depressed, or I just can't bring myself to do it, or I'm so burned out. I don't understand. See, that's the thing, Julia. I don't get. I don't get so burned out. That phrase, I don't understand it. I don't have diabetes, but I've lived a pretty horrible life at times. I've been flat broke. I've been, destitute as a child. I don't understand. You don't get up in the morning and fight. That's the part that I can never wrap my head around, I guess. So anyway, this is depressing, Julie.
But it's a reality.
I know.
Like, you and I are more intrinsically motivated than the average people, probably.
I don't even know. Like, I can't even tell if that's true. Like, I don't want to take credit for something that feels so human to me, but I guess the same would go to, finding fault with somebody that's, experiencing something that's so human to them. Like, maybe a lack of motivation is just their base setting, which I don't know that makes it bad. It just makes it who they are. And if you give that person a life without diabetes, they're probably okay, but you drop diabetes on top of them, and now that's a person who's going to struggle more than the next person does. Like, when Jenny's on the show, mm-hmm. and she talks about her care, it feels so easy. But I try to remember it's easy because that's her personality.
Yeah, you don't need to tell her that she needs to do it. She just knows and does it.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it feels like so much effort.
If we translate that back into medicine, are there many more people who lack the motivation to make a difference than there are those who want to make a difference? Like, what do you intersect more?
These days, post-COVID, with all the trouble with mental health, there's a lot of people that are not able to get themselves out of the hole that mm-hmm. they dug or not.
Yeah.
That's a heavy burden for the system, no?
Yeah.
Because even if you fix them from one standpoint, like you take months and months of rehab and all that stuff, it doesn't mean that they're going to get to the end and not do exactly what they did in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And so those people are, I guess it's a burden to the system because they're patients, but also I'm going to assume a number of them are actually employees too, who are experiencing these same things. Mm-hmm. Now, if everyone's a little more depressed than they used to be, there's going to be more burden and fewer people to help you dig out of it.
Yes. Yeah. And like, if I look where I work, COVID was extremely difficult like anywhere else. We've lost a lot of nurses that went for better quality of life jobs, that went for, some of them probably are on sick leave and I just don't realize that they're on sick leave, but a lot of them have left mm-hmm. to go for a job that's not so emotionally taxing.
Yeah.
So the people that come in to fill the gap
are no.
They're not the people that have the experience of the very heavy ICU that takes the people that don't fit anywhere else, right? And so you end up with people that are very competent nurses, but it takes time for them to get on top of the skills you need to keep people alive in those kind of situations.
Right. Yeah. So there's a training period that's going on, and possibly you've hired people who in the past you would have overlooked because they wouldn't have been what you wanted for the position, but now you might have to take them because that's what exists.
Probably.
Yeah.
And that exists also in hospital pharmacy, in the sense that there's extra schooling you can do past your basic pharmacy degree to do hospital pharmacy, but there's just a few of them. And so those people, when you hire them, they're like gold stars, and they can pick up and they already know what they want to do, and they're very proactive. But then you end up having to hire some people who have been working in the community for a number of years or have been just finishing their degree. And those people, to get them up to speed in a tertiary center with like very specialized area and very sick people, it takes time. And it's not like you can give them a pill and they suddenly know everything. Like, everybody in that place learns new things every day, even after 25 years of working there.
I wonder how much AI, for example, will help in the future with medicine and with the patient side and the follow-up. Like, I wonder if some of these people could be caught by their phone literally telling them, don't forget.
You haven't refilled your meds for the past 2.5 months? Yeah.
Right.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
And there's already, like, not exactly AI because it doesn't think by itself, but there's already, like, Alberta has, and that exists everywhere in other settings too.
Reminder systems.
We bought a big software that replaced everything a few years back. And that software makes connections or allows to get to documentation from the past so much more easily than paper charting. And it flags for interactions, it flags for odd doses of some drugs, it flags for a lot of different things. And so that allows to have the prescriber not necessarily know all that stuff, but gets flagged. Sometimes flagged too much and flagged for stuff that's insignificant. But the computer is helping out to catch more potential mistakes or dangerous doses.
Yeah, I think it has to be a combination. I really think that, I'm doing something right now. I don't think I've said it out loud on the podcast yet, but I'm behind the scenes. I'm busy cataloging the podcast as audio files transcribed by AI so that you can one day ask an AI bot a question about type 1 diabetes and it will access the entirety of the lifetime of the podcast to find the answer.
That's wonderful.
So yeah, try to imagine the internet, but it's just for type 1 diabetes. And this AI bot can literally take your question and go find all the answers and give you an amalgam of that answer. And I'm just doing it, I'm in the beginning process of it. And I'm very scared that at some point it's going to become a financial burden that I can't carry to make it happen. But so far it's something I'm able to do behind the scenes. It's tough when you live on ads, like, it's not a thing I can sell ads on or anything like that, but I want to try to leave it behind because I'm very scared that everyone's conversations and thoughts, that have been poured into this now almost 1,200 episodes, I don't want them to be lost because I think the secret to a lot is held within these conversations in this podcast. So that's one of the things I'm trying to do. But I could also see where you could one time go in and tell something one day, an app, look, I have type 1 diabetes. I need to be reminded. This is where I get my insulin from. I need this to happen. Like, I need you to remind me. It has to be ordered 3 months before, or, I have to make sure my insurance covers it. Like, keep bugging me, keep telling me what to do, prompt me to do these things. Because I think if that doesn't happen, it's difficult. It's too much for people. And it doesn't, like, the care of a chronic illness doesn't mesh with a modern American lifestyle. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah. Like you said to me this morning, I said, how are you? You said, I'm tired, right? And you're tired because there's more things to do than time. And so you're giving away sleep to do things. And then I said, I just woke up at 4:30 this morning to do things I didn't have time to do if I would have woken up at 7 o'clock. and I'm not going to be bored today. And in a life that goes like that, how do you remember to order your Synthroid in 6 months? Like that kind of stuff.
That's exactly the kind of challenge I have with ADHD, because that's what that brain is lacking. The ability to remember to do the little things, like the people with ADHD end up in trouble with paying the bills, with appointments. They're like chronically late or disorganized and unable to have the right things when they need to.
Yeah. But I think it's more people than just ADHD. I think that
but ADHD is 5% of your population, which is 1 in 20. So if you look at a room with 100 people, there's 5.
Oh, I'm saying that even if it's not diagnosed ADHD, I think more people have that than not. Like I think you see in a family setting, a mother, a father in a classic family setting and a bunch of kids, somebody takes care of things. Everyone's not on top of everything.
No. And if it's a genetic condition, you're likely to have parents that are just as messy as their kids.
Yeah, right. And then good luck. And I've had those conversations with people too, where they're like, listen, people as adults, they say, look, as a kid, I was not on top of things. My parents weren't either. And sometimes you hear it as like addictions too. Like I didn't know what to do with my diabetes. I turned to my parents and they're using meth. So they weren't much help. That's not a thing I made up. That's a thing from an actual conversation. So, like when there's all these things going on, you're already seeing the ball being dropped in so many walks of life. This is the wrong path to go down, but a lot of people's trouble in day-to-day life stems from their own poor decision-making. And it's not like poor decision-making like they set out and did the wrong thing or they decided to snort Coke today instead of going to work. I even mean like simple, make a left, make a right, do this, do that. Pay the bill today, pay it tomorrow. Like people so frequently make these little micro decisions poorly that it throws them in a completely different way. They don't even realize it's happening. And, like when that's your MO, big things are really going to get booted. Like the big things are really going to get messed up. Like when you see somebody who is, I don't know how to use an example. Like when you see somebody who goes to the gym 3 days a week and they're fit and they eat well and everything, if you go look at their life, their lives are very much like that. It's because it's who they are. And if you go find people whose lives are scattered, you'll often see that their health is scattered or that other things are dropped. A lot of balls are being dropped here and there. I don't say it's out of malice. I just think it's who they are. And that's how it goes. I joke with my wife all the time. If it wasn't for me, we'd be broke. And we all laugh about it, but it's true. Like my wife doesn't pay attention to money the way I do. If it was up to my son, he wouldn't have thyroid medication. He's 24 years old. Like I'm still the one that says, hey, do you have your thyroid medication? You know what I mean? Like I'm the person in that house. Now my wife is completely capable. I'm not saying she's not. My son's capable. Everyone's capable. But there's only one person in this house that has a caregiver mentality, and that's me. And so if you don't have that and you're by yourself, you need help. You just do. And, I'm sorry. It's upsetting to me because I get to hear all these conversations from different perspectives all the time. So sometimes
I'm used to be that person in my household too.
I imagine you are. Yeah.
The one that plans ahead. But that being said, I calm down probably my own anxiety by planning.
Oh, really? Oh, that helps you? I would love to stop helping people.
No, for me, it helps because otherwise I get upset as how messy they are. Like how disorganized, how, I don't know. So planning helps me.
Yeah, I get that. For me, it's all very much about health and forward motion. I only get upset if people aren't healthy or moving in a good direction. Like those are the things that upset me. If I see my family struggle, that's where it gets me. The rest of it, they can do whatever they want. I don't care. And there's a big part of me that would like to forget about everybody and just be a lazy person once. But I don't even know what that feels like. I realized the other day I was watching a football game standing up. And I was like, why am I not seated while I'm watching this? And I was in the kitchen. And I'm like, why am I not I woke up in the morning. I said to my wife, I really want to watch that football game at 6:00 tonight. She goes, nobody's stopping you. I was like, great. And then 6:00 came And I'm like, I start watching the game and I'm watching it from the kitchen. And I realized I'm doing the dishes. I'm cleaning up. I made some food. Like, no one asked for food. I just started making food. I was like, you know what? I have sausage and shrimp. I think I could put a pasta together. Do I have tomatoes? I do. I made a sauce. Like, I did the whole thing. And I'm like watching the game and I'm like, no one even asked me for this pasta. When it got done, they were like, what's this? I'm like, it's dinner. They're like, oh, okay. And then I had that thought. I was done and I was cleaned up and I was like, I'm not sitting down and watching this football game. And I thought the majority of Americans watching this game right now are sunken into some sort of a sofa watching this game. And I'm not. And I don't know what that is about me.
Just like you, I would be running in circles too.
Yeah. I don't understand it. I came in here this morning to do something that had to happen in this room that had nothing to do with the podcast. And then I realized I could do it while I was doing something else. So I sat down and I was writing out bills. Basically, I was paying bills online.
Mm-hmm.
So I was paying bills online on one screen. And and I happen to be lucky enough, I have two screens. I record the podcast on one computer and I do my work on the other. So on the one computer, I was paying the bills. I turned to the other computer and I started writing an email to the advertisers about why podcasts are such good ways to use your advertising dollars. I was sending them facts and figures and like opportunities to they're all already signed up this year. I'm like selling them for 2025 already. I'm like, it's fucking January, Julie.
I hear you. I'm the same way.
Yeah. And I'm putting this email together. I'm like, oh, this is good. And I'm paying my bills at the same time. But I'm a very relaxed person. I love calm. I love sitting around. I love being relaxed and everything else. It's when I get around other people that I care about that I worry about them more than I do about myself. And so everyone needs a little bit of that because I have enough of it for everybody who listens. And I saw somebody respond to me on Facebook the other night and she said, I'm just here to say how much I appreciate the effort that must go into making that podcast. I know many of us here would not be as healthy without it. And a lot of people came in to kind of like jump on and say, yeah, me too. And I was like, oh, this is the one place where my energy doesn't get split between people because the delivery service works the way it does. I'm basically talking to one of you, but it's many tens of thousands of you that can still hear it. It's still my one effort of time. But I don't know, like, I want everybody to be okay or better than they are. And it can be frustrating sometimes to look up and see that they don't want that for themselves. They need it and they're looking for it, but they don't want it enough to do it, I guess. It's hard for me to say. Anyway, I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry.
To go back again, you said like 20 minutes ago, you try to explain this to people in the hospital, like this, your new understanding of diabetes, but you don't think they get it or they don't have time for it or what is it?
It's not necessarily lengthy discussions. I need to take the opportunities that I'm given and not expect to have a 3-hour discussion with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as I said, in ICU, everything is, not everything, but a lot of things are foreign to everybody. No, it's a very different setup. But the one part I can do is when I make suggestions on how we could adjust people's insulin, I try to give an explanation to go with it. Sometimes you have people that come in that are, rare are the people who get a tray and eat food. A lot of them are fed either through their veins with parenteral nutrition or with tube feeds through their nose in a formula form. And a lot of times people come in and, not oftentimes, but once in a while you have somebody that comes in that just has basal and a correction scale. And you kind of have to explain to them that this will work until it doesn't work. If your patient starts throwing up, then your basal is too much. And you need to kind of aim roughly for like a 50-50. And you have to explain to them that when you're fed around the clock like that, you cannot just put the B-bit on the usual like Humalog and Lantus or whatever it is and hope that it's going to work. You actually need to have your basal, and then you need to have probably Humulin R every 6 hours because your carbs don't go in like a big meal at once. They come in trickle over time.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to do it every 6 hours, no matter how convenient or not convenient it is to get poked at midnight, it becomes the way to keep a better care of your blood sugar. Because we don't see what happens in between the monitoring, like when they poke 4 times a day, plus when they're worried, that means that you get 4 numbers a day. You don't know what happens in between the two. You don't know. If you give them Humalog and they bottom out or they get close to it, you won't know unless they are actually able to tell you or they physically show signs that they are hypo. And same for the highs. And then sometimes there's oftentimes people with delirium that the fact that their blood sugar swings around or goes all the way to 300-400s during the day is not necessarily taken into account as part of why their brain is functioning so poorly.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm able to, as I said, not necessarily have a 3-hour discussion at once about diabetes, but like put bits and pieces of explanation as we decide to make changes or as things change. Patient was eating a normal tray and is now tube fed or.
Right. Is it not possible to take a small squadron of nurses and like really drill down and teach it to them? Take 5 of them and just pull them aside, a couple of hours a week. And
but the unit I work on has 150 nurses.
Yeah, but I mean, if you like to put a seed down, like to put a handful of them into the pool that really understand insulin, how it works and how to manage. And then, start off by putting them on the people with diabetes and then pair them with somebody else to watch what's happening till they can learn. Like, is there not a way to teach people this? I mean, I learned it myself and I teach people without even them being with me. Like, is there not a way for them to learn how to do this?
The nurse usually has very little to do with the adjustment of the regimen. Like other than when they are on an insulin infusion, they're the ones that they're given a range of blood sugar to target for.
Yeah, I know.
And then they will adjust the infusion up and down to achieve that.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, like in the B-bit per se, they don't necessarily adjust. They are going to do what they're told, right? Mm-hmm. And they have also, a lot of them have quite a bit of experience that makes them refractory to change.
Yeah. Oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Is that the saying?
No, but when we're, as I said, like when we do rounds, like when we spend half an hour talking about each patient every day on rounds, well, the stuff that I teach the resident through little bits and pieces, well, the nurse is there to listen to as well. Mm-hmm. And so you hope that some of it, I don't want to become also a one-woman show that talks about diabetes all day long, but doesn't do the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's limitations.
Because even my colleagues I don't think would want to do any of this. Like they would feel at loss, just like I was before my son got diagnosed.
Yeah. I hear you. Okay. Well, this is depressing.
It is. but it's just a context that's very difficult with people that don't have the reflexes that you and I have every day.
Yeah. Well, also it for people listening, what you have to take away from this, in my opinion, is the hospital is for emergencies. They are very good at emergencies. You break your arm, you have a heart attack, your gallbladder fails, they're going to help you. And they're going to do a great job at it. You have cancer, you go to a cancer center. Those people know how to help you. Like that's the stuff you want to go there for. 100 million %. If you're having heart issues because of your type 2 diabetes has been out of control for years and you go to the hospital, they're going to help you as best they can with the emergent problem you're having with your heart. They are not going to help you fix your type 2 diabetes. And I think that that's mostly what we have to change in patients is the idea that there's a magic place somewhere where everyone knows everything. And if I go there, it's all going to be fixed.
Or they will get the ball rolling.
But you have to pick it up and keep running with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, in a world where people can't remember to take vitamins, I'm sure that this is going to be no problem. Everybody's going to take care of it right away. I hate to say something cliched, but you have to prioritize yourself.
Obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it is obvious, but it doesn't happen. It happens for nobody. Hardly ever. And when it does happen for them, they're doing it on Instagram and we're all laughing at them for being in the gym for 9 hours a day. There's not many examples of just average people putting in the average amount of effort that keeps you healthy instead of making it their entire life so that they can stay focused on it, which I think is is partly true. Like, I mean, you see that was one guy, he like runs like 10 miles a day or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's your brand. You sell that. Like, you have a podcast where you make money talking about how you run all the time. I can't go running for 10. Even if I could run 10 miles, where am I going to find that time at? I make my money a different way. I have to be here in front of this computer doing this thing. I don't know. Just do the best for yourself you can, but don't give up and don't ignore it, for God's sakes. Like, just put your best effort into it. Or otherwise you're going to be 63 years old one day sitting in a doctor's office and they're going to tell you something that's going to sound like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen until I was 80. Not a lot of coming back from stuff like that, Got a finite amount of time to take care of yourself. The work you put in now, almost in everything, you get paid back later with it. And that might be some of the problem too, in a society where everybody's used to getting something immediately. The work, you don't take a vitamin today to feel better today. You might not even notice it, even when it's helping you. I think that's hard to wrap your head around sometimes. Anyway, you have any parting words, Julie?
Yeah, make sure that you're part of the priorities. Self-care is definitely worth it. It's worth it to let go of some little things that in the end don't matter that much to make some space for yourself.
Yeah, that's good advice. Also, can I show off a little bit from my high school French class? Neuf means 9.
Good start.
It took me 3 years to learn that. I don't have that kind of time to put into the rest of it. I might know a couple of the other numbers, but I don't want to show off. And my accent's not good.
Save that for the next podcast.
Yeah, we're going to save it where I go like, I can maybe get this. Yeah, maybe 5 or 6 I can get to. And then there's some loss in there. And I know neuf means 9. And then that's pretty much it. I do remember my French teacher was very pretty, but that didn't seem to help anything.
See, my husband, he's born and raised in Edmonton, where we are. And he told his French teacher in high school, like, why am I doing this for? Not knowing that he was going to marry me. So,
well, see, he had a good reason. By the way, if my French teacher was in her mid 40s, as I expect she was, that was 37 years ago. She's 82 now. So hurry up and figure your stuff out, because time goes by real quick. Madame Boudin, if you're out there, I didn't understand a goddamn thing you were saying. Hilarious. All right, hold on a second for me, Julie, please. A huge thank you to one of today's sponsors, Gvoke Glucagon. Find out more about Gvoke HypoPen at gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. You spell that GVOKEGLUCAGON.com/juicebox. A huge thank you to Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Are you tired of having to change your sensor every 7 to 14 days? With the Eversense CGM, you just replace it once every 6 months via a simple in-office visit. Learn more and get started today at eversensecgm.com/juicebox. The conversation you just enjoyed was brought to you by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get started today and get your supplies from US Med. If you or a loved one was just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and you're looking for some fresh perspective, the Bold Beginnings series from the Juicebox Podcast is a terrific place to start. That series is with myself and Jenny Smith. Jenny is a CDCES, a registered dietitian, and a type 1 for over 35 years. And in the Bold Beginnings series, Jenny and I are going to answer the questions that most people have after a type 1 diabetes diagnosis. The series begins at episode 698 in your podcast player, or you can go to juiceboxpodcast.com and click on Bold Beginnings in the menu. Hey, thanks for listening all the way to the end. I really appreciate your loyalty and listenership. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Hey, what's up, everybody? If you've noticed that the podcast sounds better and you're thinking like, how does that happen? What you're hearing is Rob at Wrong Way Recording doing his magic to these files. So if you want him to do his magic to you, wrongwayrecording.com. You got a podcast? You want somebody to edit it? You want Rob.